Maddie's Magic Christmas by Maxfield. Nanny usually ran the flower shop on Saturdays so that Mum could do the shopping and spend some time with Maddie. But the last Saturday before Christmas was always particularly busy, so Maddie helped Nanny Dot make up the Christmas wreaths in the back of the shop, while Mum and her 17-year-old shop assistant, Sally Holson, served the customers. At this time of year, their Christmas wreaths and holly sprigs sold as fast as Mr. Steiner's solemn cakes, and she and Nanny would be hard-pressed to keep up with demand. It was a tradition she loved, usually. Once again, she woke up feeling miserable. It must be the snow, she thought. I wish it would all blow away. Mum was grumpy too. I shouldn't have eaten all those butter cookies, she grumbled. I feel like a fat slug, and just as slow. Last night, Maddie, Mum and Nanny had finished the cookies in front of the TV. They were delicious as always, but the more they ate, the worse they seemed to feel. Luckily, Mum had forbidden them to touch the sachet torte. She was going to cut the cake into small portions to serve her customers as a special Christmas treat. The shop was bustling. Usually no one was more delighted by the continual ka-ching of the cash register than Nanny Dot. But she had arrived in a bad mood. As the morning went on, her wreaths began looking a bit bedraggled, and Mum sent a few of the wreaths back with Sally, with the message that they weren't good enough and to put a little effort in. Sally, embarrassed to be the message bearer, was mortified when Nanny Dot burst into angry tears, stamping into the shop to confront her daughter. Maddie shared Sally's feelings. Soon, Mum was in tears too, and she and Nanny bickered. A few customers scurried away, while others stayed to enjoy the scene. One of Daniel Hargate's dads, Maddie never knew sure which was which, as they both were very handsome, calmed the situation down. Soon, everyone was laughing about the things Christmas did to perfectly rational people. All the stress and anxiety and unrealistic expectations sent them a little loopy. Maddie had heard of this sort of thing before. One year, Susie's normally lovely mum threw the undercooked turkey out of the kitchen window, while all of Susie's relatives sat at the dinner table waiting for dinner. Why do grown-ups go crazy at Christmas? Susie had asked. Christmas is wonderful. Mum and Nanny hugged, wiped away their tears, and by early afternoon, everyone, Maddie included, was feeling better. There's plenty of cake left, Mum said to Maddie. Why don't you call Susie and Daisy to come over and have some? Susie and Daisy arrived later, bursting with the news that Jake Burns had broken his arm when he had lost control of his sled and smashed into a tree. Jake was the best-looking boy in their class, so Maddie knew he'd get a lot of signatures on his cast. If she didn't feel too shy, maybe she'd even have one herself. That opportunity aside, Jake's accident just went to show why Snow couldn't be trusted. They wolfed the cake in the back of the room of the shop, nattering and giggling, washing it down with orange squash. Susie declared it tasted like chocolate orange. The florist's shop shut at 4 on Saturdays. Mum said anyone who hadn't sorted out their flower needs by that stage in the weekend was a dead loss or didn't care for blooms. She cashed up as Sally and Nanny Dot bought the pavement displays inside. What are you getting for Christmas? Daisy asked Maddie. I don't know, Maddie said. I'm hoping for a new bike. Mine's so old. It's too small for me now. It's too small for me now. I'd love a red one, with a basket on front. As she said this, Maddie was suddenly struck by a wave of sadness. She pictured her old bike, lying neglected in the shed in the back garden, and felt a lump rise in her throat. Poor bike. The best present I ever had was my Belle doll, Daisy sighed. I loved her. I still hate your brother for throwing her out in the river, Susie said. Won't your mum get you another one? Maddie asked. It won't be the same. Daisy's lower lip trembled. She won't be my Belle. All three girls stood in morose silence. I miss my granddad, Susie whispered. I miss Mrs. Steiner, Maddie said, and my dad. Daisy started to cry first, setting off the other two. I feel so sad, Maddie moaned. They clutched each other's hands, huddling together in a little weepy circle. Whatever's going on? Mum's voice broke through. The girls looked up to see Mum and Susie's mum, Mrs. Bailey, standing in the doorway staring at them with alarm. We just feel so sad, Susie said, running to wrap her arms around her mother's waist. Have you girls been arguing? Mrs. Bailey asked. All three shook their heads vigorously. Mum frowned. It's been a funny day. Lots of people seem out of sorts, sad or tetchy. I felt the same way. Maybe it's the weather, Mrs. Bailey said. And it gets dark so early. She gave Susie a squeeze. Come on, silly. Time to go. Daisy, your mum asked me to drop you off. Take a slice of torte with you, Mum offered. I've been saving mine to have with a cup of tea at home. If you're sure, Mrs. Bailey said. Is it from Steiner's? Her eyes lit up at Mum's nod. They didn't decorate the tree that night after all. At 7 o'clock, Mum declared she had a cracking headache and took herself to bed, while Nanny Dot sniffled her way through a showing of It's Wonderful Life on Film 4, outright bawling towards the end. Maddie hated the film and locked herself in her room. She tried painting a Christmas card for Mum, but the colours came out blotchy and muddy looking. Oh, this is going to be the worst Christmas ever, she cried, tearing it up. Outside, it began to snow again. Fortunately, everyone was cheerier on Sunday morning. Nanny Dot sung carols as she folded the sofa bed away. Nanny Dot didn't actually live with them. She had her own small house half a mile away, but she often stayed overnight on the sofa bed, especially on Saturdays. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the sun made the snow sparkle. Even Maddie had to admit it looked pretty. It's like a Christmas card, Nanny said. Not many sleeps now. 6, Maddie said, searching for the 19th on her advent calendar. She popped the chocolate in her mouth. Tomorrow it would be Mum's turn. Morning, Mum said, appearing in the kitchen. She looked perkier than she had last night. Can we do the tree this morning? Maddie said. Mum poured herself a cup of tea from the pot, which was wrapped in a Christmas pudding cosy. Don't you want to wait until it's dark? I can't wait any longer, Maddie begged. Please. Mum laughed. Okay, I'll just have some toast. You and Nanny start putting up the tree. Yay! Maddie yelled. She and Nanny pulled the composite parts of the artificial tree out the box, barely held together with years of parcel tape. Some of the kids at school claimed artificial trees were rubbish, and only real ones were good enough. Maddie didn't agree. They didn't know the pleasure of getting the same tree out year after year. Like seeing an old friend you didn't know you were missing until they visited again. Plus, Maddie liked trees. She didn't want to think of them being chopped down. It seemed a mean thing to do, although Mum insisted it didn't hurt them. Put on some music, Maddie, Nanny called. She was checking the lights before they went on the tree. There was nothing worse, Nanny said, than finding the lights didn't work after you'd fought to wrap them around the tree. Maddie chose her favourite soundtrack, A Muppet Christmas Carol. Magic began to fill the air. Good choice, Mum said, coming into the lounge with her toast and a tea to take a directional seat on the sofa. The morning was a happy one. They hung years' worth of collected and homemade decorations on the tree, exclaiming over each one, welcoming it back to the light after months of lying in a dark box in the loft. Then they made brightly patterned paper chains, festooning them around the flat, adding hanging baubles and bells to the inverted V's between the swags. Mum hung one of their handmade wreaths on the inside of the flat's front door and arranged a vase of holly and ivy on the mantelpiece. It all looked so jolly. Then they sat down to admire the handiwork and celebrate with a piece of stollen and coffee for Mum and Nanny, while Maddie had a large glass of fizzy Coca-Cola, something she was only allowed occasionally. The sunshine had disappeared behind thick clouds that threatened more snow. No one minded because the gloom made the tree lights glow more vibrantly. They gazed at it in peaceful wonder. "Oh," Mum said, "I forgot. Maddie, I bought you your own little tree and lights for your room." "Really?" Maddie bounced up, delighted. "Where is it?" "I'll get it." Mum went into her bedroom, a place Maddie was banned from in the run-up to Christmas, although it was no longer necessary, since 3 years ago, Maddie had broken the rules and sneaked in to find her presents in the bottom of Mum's wardrobe. It had completely ruined the surprise on Christmas Day, and Maddie had been so ashamed she'd never told Mum or Nanny what she'd done. Mum returned with a bag from Wilko's. In it was a tabletop-sized tree, a string of white lights, and a carton of pretty baubles in pink, silver, and gold. There was a glittery silver star on top. "Thank you," Maddie breathed. "I'm going to put it up right now." It took her half an hour to set up the tree on top of her desk. It twinkled gorgeously. Maddie went to fetch Mum and Nanny. They'd cleared away their plates and taken them to the kitchen. Maddie heard Mum's voice, followed by Nanny's muted reply. She was about to push open the door when she realised Mum's voice sounded wrong. It cracked the way Maddie's did when she was trying not to cry. Maddie held her breath and listened. "It must be the snow," Mum said. "I haven't thought about him for so long. Haven't let myself. But for the last couple of days, it's all I've thought about. How could he have left us? Whether he's alive or dead, I feel like it's only just happened." Maddie gasped. Mum was talking about Dad. She never did that. "I know," Nanny soothed. "I know. I've been thinking about him too." Maddie shook her head, bewildered. What was happening? Why was everyone so sad this year? Maddie tiptoed back to her room, shutting the door quietly. A few minutes later, someone knocked on her bedroom door. "Yeah?" Mum peered into the room. She smiled weakly when she saw the little tree. "Very pretty," she said, crossing to the bed to give Maddie a kiss. "Just like my favourite daughter." It seemed to Maddie that Mum's hug was tighter than usual. Maddie leaned into her. "I need to go to the supermarket," Mum said, finally releasing her. "Do you want to come or stay here with Nanny?" "I'll come," Maddie said, hopping off the bed. Nanny was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of sherry and a grim expression. Before her, she had a pile of Christmas cards to write. "Waste of paper," she muttered. "Nanny," Maddie reminded her, "you love cards." "I know," Nanny sighed. "I'm just being a bit of a humbug." "Here," she handed Maddie a card. "Drop this off at Mr. Steiner's, would you?" Maddie took the card. Outside, Mum said, "I'll de-ice the car and get it warmed up while you drop the cards round." The gritter had cleared the road, but today the pavements were snowy, as none of the shopkeepers had salted their fronts. Maddie clomped carefully through the snow to the bakery. On a Sunday, even before Christmas, it was shuttered and locked up tight. It was the same on Mondays. But Maddie could see the lights were on in the back kitchen where Mr. Steiner did his baking, so she set off down the narrow alleyway between the bakery and the neighbouring post office to the back door. It was the way she used to take on a Monday afternoon when she helped out Mrs. Steiner. Maddie saw Mr. Steiner through the window. He was kneading dough on a large table, hands and forearms covered in flour. She was about to knock when she noticed a fat teardrop splash onto the dough. It was followed by another and another. More and more tears melted into the mixture. Yet Mr. Steiner kept on kneading, as though he didn't even know he was crying. The strains of Stille Nacht wafted through the glass. Maddie knew it as the German version of Silent Night. She turned away. Was every person in town sad? Her heart was heavy as she crept back up the entry and round to the front of the bakery. She slid the card into the letter slot on the front door and scurried over to the car, belching fumes into the afternoon air. Her mum waited behind the wheel. "Did you give it to him?" Mum asked, as Maddie belted herself in. Maddie shook her head and told Mum what she'd seen. "Oh, poor man," Mum said. "It was about this time last year he'd lost his wife. I wonder what he's doing for Christmas. I hope he's got somewhere to go." Maddie considered it. "Maybe we could invite him," Mum ummed non-committedly. "Well, we'll see what Nanny Dot thinks. I'm sure he's had plenty of invitations."